Welcome to Inside the Corner Office, a podcast where you will be taken behind the scenes of the daily life of a CEO. I'm Thomas Buberl, CEO of AXA. In each episode of this podcast, we will delve into a specific aspect of this role. You will see that making decisions from an office is definitely not what this job is all about. For every topic, we'll be joined by a leader of a major organization. I hope you will enjoy these discussions. Tune in and take a seat at the table. We are inside the corner office. Today, I'm very happy to be with Hélène Huby. She's the founder and CEO of the Exploration Company, one of Europe's most ambitious aerospace ventures. After a distinguished career at Airbus and ArianeGroup, she chose to build a European spacecraft company. Today, she leads a team pioneering sustainable space logistics, and together, they are reshaping Europe's role in deep tech innovation. Hélène combines engineering expertise, entrepreneurial courage, and certainly very strong European convictions. Welcome, Hélène.
Thank you very much, Thomas.
So let's start with a very simple question. Do you remember when we met the first time?
Yes, very well.
When was it and where was it?
It was at X.
Exactly.
And I was very much impressed by your knowledge about the space industry and your to-the-point questions.
Very good. And we'll certainly go into that as well. I was certainly also very impressed by your career and your courage to go into this. And I think that's what I would like to talk about. Mm-hmm. And maybe let's start with this topic around courage. When I look at your career, a career that one could say is a very traditional one. You have done ENA, which is a very prestigious school. You have worked at Airbus and Ariane. You have also, I think, afterwards worked in a fund. And all of a sudden you decide, I want to become entrepreneurial and I'm launching myself into something that could be considered as very risky. So tell me a little bit about your journey and why you did this.
Yeah, I think it all comes back to by what I'm driven, and I'm driven by impact. We have a limited period of time when we are on this planet, and for me the question is, and has always been, what are my talents, and how can I unleash these talents to maximize the positive impact I will create? Because I'm convinced that every human on this planet has a unique set of talents. And if we can unleash that unique set of talents to serve the others, then this is wonderful. And I was at Airbus, and I love this company because it's a great symbol of what Europe can do when we work together. But when we look at the pace of the space market, when we look also at the cost of the competition, especially the cost that now SpaceX can achieve, I came to the conclusion that if I wanted to positively impact the European space ecosystem and potentially even, the global space ecosystem, it would be easier to do it outside Airbus than to do it from the inside. Because it's very difficult to change a big group. And I admire people like you and all the CEOs of big group who are really focused on that. And it's actually easier to build something from scratch. So it's riskier. But if we succeed, the impact is massive. Yeah. So it's worth the risk.
But what is interesting in your case, I mean, I fully agree with you, but most people say and do this at the age of 25 or 28 before they start a career in a big group. Because, I mean, look, I'm a victim of a big group as well. And so you can say that over time, you become, part of the big group, which means that you are probably not increasing in entrepreneurial spirit. You have been part of this big group as well, which is a great example of Europe. How did you manage not to be absorbed by these rather bureaucratic structures and still have the ability to say, okay, I'm restarting at a later age than 25 or 28?
Yeah, I think I had always, when I was young, etc., this willingness to build stuff. Yeah. When I was younger, I wanted to create, I wanted to take the lead. And even when I was at Airbus, I created 2 foundations on the side to, again, create impact. So from the scratch, and still exists today, and I've grown quite well. A fund also that I created. Yep. So I had kind of on the side, I would say, entrepreneurial activities. And before Airbus, I spent actually almost 8 years in the startup environment. So I knew a little bit about that. And really, I was one of the youngest executives. So the question for me is, I project myself in 10 years and I stay at Airbus. Can I transform Airbus? Or if I project myself in 10 years and I have created something new, the chances of failure of 99% normally. But then if it succeeds, again, the impact is massive. So it was somehow very rational. There was also a feeling of excitement and the desire to create a culture very specific in the company. Because one part is about impact, and I love the model of the company, because the day you are profitable, you have infinite life.
Exactly.
If
but
you stay,
it's not easy to get there very fast.
It's not easy to get there.
Exactly. Before we go there, did you learn anything at Airbus that has helped you for your career today, or would you say no? A large company, doesn't really help me for being entrepreneur.
No, I learned. I mean, everything I would say now is a bit different because the company is existing since 4 years and a half. But when we founded the company, everything I knew about aerospace, I learned at ArianeGroup and Airbus. And I think you spoke about courage. I wouldn't have had the courage, or I say I wouldn't have taken the decision to found the exploration company if I wouldn't have felt, okay, I've learned enough in terms of technical knowledge, programmatic knowledge, so that we can now build, because like building a European space capsule, which is what we're doing. And then the next step is the biggest European rocket ever developed in Europe. These are very, very long programs, very risky. It requires profound knowledge of this business, of this technology. And I think I wouldn't have done that like very young, just because I wouldn't have felt I know enough to do.
Yeah. And so how did you prepare this launch into this very courageous experiment? Did you also start on the side, and the day you switched, you had your team ready, you had everything ready? Or did you start with an idea, just yourself, and recruited everybody afterwards?
It's a mix. I first matured because actually one day I got a call from an executive search, and I was offered a very, very nice job, but not in space. So I realized, okay, my life is really going to be in space, because I declined even if it was more prestigious and whatever than the job at Airbus. And I also understood, okay, it will be Airbus or something else. So I took a coach for about 9 months to mature this project and understand if I wanted to stay or I wanted to leave. Okay, the decision came, I want to leave. And then when I knew I wanted to leave, I said, okay, but I have no idea what I'm going to build. And this is when I started speaking with 2, 3, 4 people whom I trusted. It was in the middle of the COVID. So we started this project completely virtual.
Yeah. And you knew these people
some I knew, some I didn't know. So, for example, Sebastian Reichstadt, who is one of the founder and head of propulsion, I phoned one of my very trusted, Emmanuel Coletti was a system engineer with whom I work at ArianeGroup. I said, Emmanuel, I need a top guy on propulsion, because propulsion is the heart of the vehicle, of the most complex area. And at the same time, I was looking on LinkedIn and I had found the profile of Sebastian. So actually, Sebastian was a recommendation of Emmanuel, at the same time, a profile. So in that case, I phoned with a recommendation. Another case, Arthur was working with me on the Orion European Service Module. John, who is now the chief engineer, was working also with me at Airbus. So it's a mix. But we were a team of 6 people, basically, working in the weekends. And we had so many different ideas. So at the end, we had the shaker method, which is, let's imagine the development of this idea into a company in 5 years and 10 years. Can we be number 1 in the world? If the answer was no, then we would just kill the idea. And the second shaker was 3 criteria that we had given to ourselves. It needs to be very core, in the sense that what we know, the fachcompetence, like the core knowledge, it has to fit with that. The second criteria was it must be transformational for Europe. And the third was 1 billion valuation in 5 years. Because again, success, profitability means this is the day you start really impacting.
How easy was it to imagine? Because, you've taken people that you knew. Let's take ArianeGroup and let's take Ariane 6. Ariane 6 today is probably the counterexample of what you want to achieve. A one-way rocket versus a rocket that is almost like a truck that is reusable many, many times. How did you embark everybody in the group of imagining something that is very different to an Ariane 6, for example?
I think at the end, it's 3 things. Of course, you have the design itself. And here it's about being inspired by the others. and it's all about physics. So you look at what the others have done, and you look at the first physical principles, and you start drawing with that. At the end, we had many different drawings, and we had some trade-offs, and okay, we came to something we would believe in. The second is the excitement about building something new and using new methods. Because you do a reusable rocket or you do a reusable capsule, and if you want to do it with the market standard, which is now defined by SpaceX, you have to go very, very fast. You have to accept failure. You have to take risk, and you have to develop really focus on hardware. So there was this excitement of building new methods that were not so much developed, I would say, in Europe. And the third one is, and this was also one of the reasons to found something different, is the kind of culture we want to create in the company. Because the objective is, of course, to build a space transportation global leader, so rocket, capsule with European routes that can serve as many countries as possible. That's the aim. But the how is as important. And the how is this culture of collaboration, this culture of love, this culture of care, but also a performance that you want to build. And that's one of the most exciting elements, because you can see already with the people with whom you work that you're building a new culture together.
Yeah. Let's go a little bit deeper in this, because obviously as an entrepreneur, you are very much driven by the idea. You have a founding team, they're all aligned. When the company grows, you can't do everything yourself. And your excitement, is probably the biggest enemy of, your sleep and so on. How did you manage to build a company, but also to delegate and go more into an organized shape to do things?
Well, it's a challenge every day. But first, it's all about people. Yeah. I need to have people in the executive committee and one level below who are much better than I in their various areas of competence. So, of course, my CFO is much better than I in finance. And, Najwa Naimi, who is like the program director, is much better than I in program management, etc. So I can really trust them.
And rely on them.
Exactly. And the next challenge, once, let's say, the executive committee is made of outstanding talent, and sometimes there are difficult choices to be made, because sometimes someone was great for the first 2 years of the company and is not scaling at the speed of the company. And then it's my role to find the right place for this person who's been loyal and given everything he or she could to the company, but it's now is best placed somewhere else to actually give also his or her best. The next challenge is actually to make sure the culture of this performance, speed, etc., is scaled down. And one challenge we had, for example, and I think we still have, is we have a lot of young managers. So they are confronted with huge technical challenges, because this is the first time we are building a reusable capsule in Europe. So nobody did that before us.
Exactly.
And at the same time, it's their first management experience. So what we did, we actually hired an executive coach, and they are coached, all of them. So I have 50 people.
Where did these people come from that were coached? Were they from like the Airbus and Ariane, or were they from various fields?
That's also a great question, because we hired a lot of people we knew at the beginning.
Yeah.
So a lot from Ariane, Airbus, our core team, and etc. And then it's and then the growth has been tremendous, because we are 4 people a bit more than 4 years ago. Now we are 425. Yeah. So and now what we set up for this year, for example, we have target quota. They will be reached or they will not be reached, but it gives a direction.
Target quota of?
Yes, of the background of the people. So 5% of people coming from SpaceX, for example, 5 people coming from Rocket Lab, 5% of people coming from other very successful startups, so that we have a minimum viable mass of people coming from companies who've used these methods of speed, hardware, test fast, learn fast, fail fast, and then improve super fast to come to a product which is highly reliable. And of course, we have also a lot of people coming from ArianeGroup, Thales, Airbus, who like me, and like they are coming with a lot of knowledge, but also a certain way of doing things. So it's extremely important to keep this diversity of background, so that we create our culture and we do not replicate actually the culture of companies. Because when an engineer has worked like 30 years in a certain way, it's very difficult to think differently and to work differently.
And what are these types of profiles that come, for example, from Thales? Are these eternally unhappy people that finally get the chance to...
No, it's very different. And this is something I find really cool. You take the executive committee of exploration company, the ages range from 31 years old to 65.
So you mean with more age, one doesn't become more boring?
And one reason for, I would say, people young, is to learn, to shape the history of space in Europe or even space in the world, because I think we are the only company in the world whose mission is to build space vehicles across nations. I would say we scale the European model of collaboration worldwide. So that's a huge motivation, for example, for a lot of American people who are now joining us. So young graduates, they want to learn, they want to make history, they want to have this method of going very, very fast. We have people coming from Thales, Airbus, typically top talent mid-career, who are a little bit frustrated by the speed.
You, a couple of years ago.
I was frustrated, but I also wanted to create impact. That was really my driver.
And plus, you made the calculation that if you stayed there for another 10 years, where would you get and so on? So, but similar to your profile.
A little bit. And people more like, 50 plus, who typically are amazing experts in what they're doing. And they are more in a philosophy of giving, sharing. And for these people, they believe in our strategy. And they believe we can be transformational. So they decide to join us because they want to share to help us go faster. And the combination is super powerful. Because if you want to go fast, you need to cut corners, you need to take risk. And if you want to mitigate the risk you take, experience in aerospace has huge value.
Yeah. And certainly, I mean, you are in a business that is extremely risky. I mean, it's not like you try and develop, a new banking solution, and if it doesn't work, you create another one for a fraction of the cost. In your industry, it's very capital intense, and if you get it wrong, it's detrimental to the company. How do you manage that risk?
It's a great question. So perhaps to give some order of magnitude, the development of a reusable cargo capsule, it's $500 million. The development of a crew capsule, we speak typically about 10 billion. And the development of a big rocket, it's
still
2 billion.
Billions, you know.
Yeah,
it remains a lot of money.
It remains a lot of money. And then if you fail the first time, it's not looking great on you. So how to manage the risks? Actually, 3 ways. The first is, when we started for this $500 million project with the capsule, we had 50K in the bank account and we were 4 people. Okay. So we said, okay, let's try to look at what is the riskiest part of the mission. And also the technology, the most difficult to master, basically. Because if you build a house, you need to make sure that the foundation are really solid. So if we do not master the riskiest part of the mission, there is no way we can be successful with the mission. And the riskiest part actually is the re-entering through the atmosphere. If you want to reuse the capsule, if you want to bring back people, you better re-enter correctly. And this is something not unknown, but that Europe has done very little in comparison to United States or China or Russia, because we never had a crew vehicle. So we had in the whole space history of Europe only 2 successful controlled re-entry in the atmosphere, and now a 3rd one with us. But that's all, and plus some military, of course, re-entry with the M51 that France is producing. So we decided to start with the re-entry. So 50K in the bank account. What is the minimum viable stuff we can do? And we did a small capsule. We raised a bit of money. So it was 2 million. We did that in 9 months and we launched it. And then the next step was a teenage capsule after the baby one. So same, iterative, small, also a way to build trust vis-à-vis the investors, because then we can show that we keep our cost, we keep our planning, a great way to hire people. So the first way to mitigate risk is really about the development roadmap. You want to go hardware first. You want to go the highest risk first, because otherwise there is no point, building on something which is not solid. The second way, of course, is the people. In our business, hiring the right people and creating the right culture is everything. If you create a culture of fear, people will start hiding risks. And in our business, the risks, they do not disappear. They explode at the end of the program, and there's this huge cost, etc. So you want to be grateful when someone comes and tell you, I think we've missed that point, or I think there is a risk, or I think I made a mistake. And then we are screwed up for the next 3 months, and we have an impact of 5 million because of the mistake I made. But you're so grateful that the person tells that to you, because if the person tells nothing, or and the mistake is discovered 1 year after, it's not 3 million impact, exactly. It's 30 million
but
impact.
How do you create this culture that people are daring to say when something is wrong, or voicing their concern when there is a risk? Because where you've worked beforehand, the opposite is probably true.
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. It's the talent of the Well, at the end, it's very simple, is to keep calm. It's not always easy. And to say thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And to show the example.
And to show the example also. So I'm making a lot of mistakes, and I'm recognizing my mistakes, and I'm correcting my mistakes, and make it a point to say, okay, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. And then let's move to the next point and let's correct it.
So you talked earlier about investors and finding money, and you said that it was you raised a couple million in 9 months. How easy was it to raise money?
At the beginning, very easy, because we were in this fancy period of, so it was 21, and basically in 2 weeks we are oversubscribed.
Where did you raise money? Was it more like institutionals? Was it families?
Purely VC, especially the first round. I declined some, let's say, corporate funds because I wanted to prove that it was a profitable business and not a strategic business that corporate would invest because they would be interested by the technology. So no public investment, no corporate, pure VC, and the majority from Europe. The second and third fundraise were a bit more difficult in the sense that it was really a big crisis, Series A and Series B, but we raised the biggest Series A ever raised in biospace startup in Europe, again, the biggest Series B. So now we've raised about 300 million.
The last two series were also European investors or more?
No, it's always a majority of European investors. I think we are the only company. So right now, 97% of the cap table of the company is European.
Talking a little bit about Europe, because I mean, the big debate that we always have, and we spoke about it as well, is that there is not enough money in Europe and not enough entrepreneurial spirit, and therefore all the money for the European new ventures comes from the US. Your case proves that this doesn't seem to be the case. Why?
I think times have changed. So I think it would have been probably much more difficult to raise money 5 years or 10 years ago. Also now with the defense boom and the sovereignty boom, sorry to speak like that, but like a lot of funds are more and more interested in deep tech, etc. And what is really great is we have now a second or third generation of entrepreneurs. And this makes a huge difference. Like Peter Beck with Spotify is investing, or in our case, Balderton, so has invested in the exploration company, or Plural, which is also a fund of entrepreneurs, has invested in the exploration company. So Bernard Liotto for Balderton, or the CEO of TransferWise for Plural, or Cherry, the people who founded Zalando in Germany. They're also so this second generation is bringing a lot of know-how in terms of how to scale a company, and that's great for the European ecosystem. And then, it's true, it's an exception. I think something that was convincing for the investors is the quality of the team. Doing something in space is scary.
And plus, in your case, the quality of the team is absolutely key because, as you say,
exactly, we
high
don't have the right people.
And to avoid the risk, you need to have good people.
And I think thanks to, of course, the experience I had at Airbus ArianeGroup, we were able to stick to our targets. So since company creation, we've met every quarter of cash target, but 1 quarter. We've been always on cost. So we have now 3 programs running, and we have 7% delay on our program. So especially in difficult times, it gives a lot of data points. And investors, of course, they like that.
And do you think the next round will be similar, that you also find, again, a lot of European investors, or you think it's becoming too big that you need to look across the Atlantic?
We will see, because we're going to raise a second part of this year. So, and we will do normally a big fundraise focused on the rocket, which is the next step after the capsule. So we are already developing actually the biggest rocket engine ever developed in Europe. So this is, I think, super exciting. I am hopeful that the majority will come from Europe, but I also want to diversify strategically. So we've opened in the UAE. We have a subsidiary in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and I'd like to have funds from the UAE because we want to be very, very strong in the region. Singapore is opening a space agency beginning of June. It's a very, very interesting region that's going to be very dynamic. And of course, US. Ideally, I'd like to have an equilibrium with, so right now is 97% European. I think if we can stay above 75% European is great, with strong partners, Singapore, UAE, and US, that would be like ideal cap table.
Do you have space sovereignty, and being in space is not only an economic issue, but also a very geopolitical issue these days? Certainly, if you look what is happening to satellites and how they are being disturbed or not. Do you ever have, let's say, political influence telling you who you can have as an investor or not, and of which nationality, or are you still very free on this topic?
No, we are not free. So there are forbidden countries or countries with whom we cannot work. Also, like we cannot hire from. We need to pay attention to the people we hire because we don't want to hire spy, for example. Regarding the investors, for the time being, we were free, but also, let's say, we've not chosen investors coming from countries that would be a no-go. I mean, to be very clear, if we want to grow the business in the United States, it's impossible to have Chinese investors or to have activities in China. I think that's very, very clear. And I had recently discussions with actually a certain number of European governments who've told me that they really would like to look in details at the next fundraising, because since we are step by step becoming a sovereign capability for Europe, of course, they want to know who owns the company, and they look at that very seriously. But our mission is to become a global company with European roots. Our mission is to build space vehicle across nations. So right now there is a big push for sovereignty. And I believe in collaboration, transatlantic collaboration. I believe in the strong power of democracy in the United States. So I'm not building the business based on, I would say, the tsunami that we can see right now. I believe we will be strong democracies in Europe, because that tsunami is also arriving in Europe, and we will see what is happening in France in 2027. But this is not the way we are building our business. We're building the business for democracies very strong in Europe, for democracies very strong in the United States, and fostering this transatlantic collaboration, and also fostering a very good collaboration between the European continent and the Arabic continent, because I am convinced that this is like mutually beneficial. And if we are honest with ourselves, Europe has great talents, but we are not the fastest continent in the world. We have a population which is, large part of the population is above 50. So at an age where sometimes you want a bit more comfort, you believe a little bit less in your dreams. If you look at the Middle East, 70% of the population is below 20 for Saudi Arabia, for example.
And very different spirit.
Very different spirit. UAE, they announce things and they do what they announced. They want to be a leader in space for the GCC, and we want to be a top one company for space in the UAE. And the US is, of course, a huge market with a very, very fast innovation cycle. So the way to be strong in Europe is not to stay focused in Europe and to say Europe sovereignty, Europe. I mean, we need to be on the markets which are moving at the right pace with the spirit of innovation, and that's reinforcing Europe.
Yeah, but you say today you don't have any constraints doing that. I mean, you have some limits.
Well, if I would do things in China, I would not
Obviously,
be allowed, or etc.
Building a global company or partially global companies is not an issue for you today. Because when you look at, when you ask people around Europe, they complain about the regulation, they complain about the influence. They often, in your case, when you think about new companies, they complain about taxation of stock options and so on, stuff I would have not even thought about. But I haven't heard anything critical from you. Is it just not applying in your case, or do you say there's bigger fish to fry?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we can always do better. And for example, the stock option for us is a huge problem because the system we have is not understandable from people in the US. But okay, I prefer to focus on things we can change. And there is a possibility, to complain about the stock option system, which is completely different in France and in Germany. And
also the taxation is
and the taxation is also, not discouraging, basically. But okay, not sure this is the best use of my time to complain about that. You take California, for example, the salary are like super high. And you pay someone in Europe, it's half the price or half the cost or 1/3 sometimes the cost of an engineer you would pay in the United States. So they also have their own problems. We prefer to build as fast as possible. And of course, a little bit try to influence the legislation, but I think that's not how we're going to change stuff. Sometimes we spend a lot of time in Europe complaining about the regulation, but let's just build stuff. And let's speak less, let's just build.
It's a very refreshing mindset because you hear that very little. But I think also when I hear and listen to what you represent, you also represent a very European spirit. So I think this idea of how can I build peace of the future Europe, and how can I maybe shape a new narrative of Europe is much more what drives you than to get upset about the taxation of...
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more, to which vision of Europe do you want to contribute?
So I'll speak a little bit about space and Europe because if I would have a magic stick and I would bring you in 10 years from now... You would be in Kourou, French Guiana, and you would see a big reusable rocket, not yet fully reusable, but first stage reusable. On the top, you will see a crew capsule, and that rocket's going to launch this crew capsule that will go to an American space station, an Indian space station, a space station somewhere. that rocket would land, probably in Oman. Then we take a mega constellation from the GCC, so the Middle East, would launch it for these people, land in Australia, then take some lunar rover, would launch it, and land again in Kourou, etc. So our vision in terms of product is to build a stack of space transportation products, so rocket, capsule, lunar lander, etc., collaboratively, so across countries. Of course, we start with Europe, but giving this collaboration to others.
Yeah. And it's like a bus system,
Exactly. And so many countries, they want to have access to space. And for Europe, this would be also so inspirational, because then people are going to, my kids, my grandchildren, perhaps, they would watch that, I don't know on which kind of device, and they would immediately feel that we as Europeans, we've built that. So they would understand what Europe is, because they can see it, they can touch it, they can feel it, they can be inspired by that. It's nothing to do with the regulation or whatsoever. And the European feeling or the European citizenship I'd love to contribute to create, or we'd love to contribite to create the Expression Company, is what we can do when we work together as humans or as Europeans. And right now, I think we're not ready yet to have a European pass, even if we love to have it, and a common citizenship. We are united in this diversity, but we need symbols to believe in what Europe can do well or great or better than just one country. And space is exactly the place for that. Because France alone or Germany alone or Italy alone, we cannot build alone a crew capsule with one country. We have to do it together. And if we can do that, not only great, but also great for other nations in the world, I think that's an amazing symbol and an amazing inspiration, which proves what Europe can do. And this, yes, we can do, it's very, very important right now.
I fully agree, and I think it's very powerful what you say. Linked to that, I think what's also important is not only to have a vision around, how you want to reinvent launches of rockets, but also to have a clear vision on what space is about and what space is about tomorrow. I think today we very much think about, okay, how can we make sure that the launches are more reusable, if I may say so, and more sustainable? But I think this question around what is space actually around? Is it just to launch satellites? Is it a military question? But is it also a question of, yes, space could be a downstream environment where, for example, for life science, there's opportunities. What is your vision on space? It's very much linked to...
It's a great question. First, I think it's an infrastructure for the Earth. Yep. And if I look short term, so in the next 5 to 7 years, what's going to really explode is basically broadband from space.
Yeah. Well, that's more the midstream and upstream part. Huh?
Exactly. And we are at a tipping point because the launch costs are becoming so affordable that it's going to become cheaper to refurbish broadband constellation in space versus improving the infrastructure on Earth.
Probably with less regulation as well.
Well, there is regulation, but a little bit different, especially now, with the Starlink Generation 3, for example, and then the next ones, there will be broadband directly to the device. So that's one mega trend, and this is moving super, super fast. But to have that successful from a business point of view, you have to have a launch cost, which is very, very low.
Yeah, but we're getting there.
Well, I hope the Expression Company can really contribute to bring launch cost very, very, very low. And for that, you need high cadence. You need a very, very big launcher, because the bigger the launcher, the lower the cost. And you need maximum reusability. These are the three factors which at the end will determine the cost per kilogram of the launcher. So broadband, like mega trend. The second mega trend is direct information from space. And before, let's say, you wanted to have military satellite to understand what was happening, which is, of course, more and more the case. And typically, you were sending data from the satellite to the ground station. Then you make some calculation to understand the data, and then you send the information to the people who wanted to have the information. What is happening now is that information is being calculated in space. So you have a lot of compute in space and then sent directly to the antenna of a tank or your device, etc., so that you get directly the information also in a more secured way, because you don't have to pass through these ground stations. Let's say next 5 years. What is coming afterwards, I believe, of course, exploration. I think SpaceX will be successful at some point in time to really help us explore the universe, and we want to be part of that. And also doing in space much more stuff that we don't want to do on Earth anymore. There is a huge hype right now around servers in space. Okay, we'll see if it goes or not. But there is also, space can become a big laboratory thanks to microgravity for pharmaceutical research. But this is more like, next 10 years. And something that I think will remain, and was always the case, is space as an inspiration. You take someone very old, someone very young, we look at space, we are amazed because it speaks to our spiritual part of ourselves, it speaks to the mathematical part, to the engineering part, scientific because we want to understand the laws, engineering because we want to build stuff to go there, artistic because the beauty is just incredible. And we have this feeling
and the emotional,
exactly. And we have the feeling that we belong to this universe as human. And a big hope I have is that if we can really decrease the cost of travel to space, if we can send more people to space, that more people on Earth that will have this overview effect and they will understand that we are in this same little spaceship, which is called the Earth, and that we need to take care of that stuff and that there is no frontier when you look, from space to the Earth. So I really hope we can have more politicians, more people going up there to potentially have a little bit different vision when they come back and do things differently.
Look, it's a fascinating conversation. We are unfortunately at the end of our conversation. I would love to continue, but I want to ask you one last question.
Okay.
Probably a lot of people are listening to us that are in the middle or at the beginning of their career. And what piece of advice would you give to somebody who is listening to us to really, think about his or her life and making the best out of it? And you are a great example of somebody who has been very disruptive in your life, but an amazing life so far.
Thank you. And we still need to fly successfully our vehicles.
Yes,
I think we need to stay true to our values. And there are so many ways in the business to do things which are against the core values, and we shall not be shy. I mean, I have this dream to make the world a better place and a more peaceful place. And this is what I said to my investors. And we've been able to raise a lot of money. So I think the more you stick to your values, even if they can look like crazy in comparison to the business, I think people will believe in you because you're so strong with your values. And which goes together is also to understand the talents we have and start believing in our dreams, because people who really transform the world are people who, and it's an ad of Apple, but you need to be a little bit crazy. Yeah. Because if you're not crazy, you're going to do incremental transformation. If you're crazy and successful, you're going to do fundamental transformation. So don't be afraid to be crazy and stick to your values.
That's a great way of ending this conversation. Thank you very much, Hélène.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Thomas.